In the previous video, we had talked about a few broken units and how they affected the balancing and progression of the battle cats. They all have shown their utter dominance over the game in their own ways, and how they trivialize a majority of the game. But there is one unit that has been released recently that borderline trivializes the entire game, or as some claim he's capable of. Is this really true though? Or is this unit's broken skill set not as absurd as it seems? In version 15.1, Lunos was added as a new Uber to the Uberfest banner. He is a Conjure unit that serves as a tanker and crowd controller. Reading his stats, he looks like a remarkably good tanker, having an effective HP of 391,000 against his target traits, while having 78,000 HP in general. His short range allows him to be able to utilize his tankiness to protect mid-rangers and backliners, although lower range melee units won't be able to be protected by him. As a small compensation to his short range, he has a small Omni-Strike Pierce of 100 from his standing range in both forms, so his damage and crowd controlling abilities have a larger effect and a lesser chance to miss. Regarding his crowd controlling capabilities, he can also knock back his target traits, being a 50% chance in first form, and guaranteed in the second form, which is nice for a unit with short range and Omni-Pierce to push up the front lines. He also has plenty of immunities, making him even better at his tanker role by allowing him to get to the front lines uninterrupted. His damage output ends up about being average compared to similar tankers, even accounting for his 10% Savage Blow, so you should not rely on him for damage and have mid-rangers and backliners for damage. You might be wondering how he seemingly breaks the game then, seeing how so far the most notable thing about him is his tanking capabilities being comparable with Rokat, which, while good, does not make him game-breaking. It's to do with aspects of him entirely unrelated to his class that his true power shines, his Conjure ability. Conjuring was added in version 13.1. When a unit has Conjure, you can tap on their icon when they're sent out for a one-time use of a Spirit Conjure, which will deal a burst of damage and apply any debuffs if applicable. The downside with this is that only one of that unit can be sent out at a time, so you'll have to wait until the first one dies before you're allowed to send out another one. A Conjured Spirit doesn't act the same as your typical cat unit. It only stays alive for a set amount of time and attacks exactly once. They do have some abilities that are very often found only in Conjured Spirits, with rare exceptions, the first being able to dodge enemy attacks. Dodge is not too uncommon of an ability, as a whole slew of cat units already have this ability, but it being guaranteed to dodge everything is what sets it apart. It can essentially act as a pocket iron wall that spawns behind the front line and deals a one-time burst of damage that can also apply debuffs. It also gets unaffected by the base shockwave that pushes back all your units, and this ability is much more rare considering there are only 2 other units in the game that share this ability, and they both stay at the cat base. This can be useful for cheesing certain stages where you deal enough damage to get the base down to 1 HP, and finish it off with a conjured unit. With this understanding, what does Lunos' Conjure ability do? It must come with some abilities to have it be considered what makes him broken. What his Conjure can do is knock back every enemy type. Sounds a little familiar to other certain broken units. On top of that, it has a guaranteed mini-surge, which means that including the initial knockback from the main attack, it will generate a mini-surge where any non-knockback immune enemies will not be able to push through. This mini-surge lingering on the battlefield is a key quality that Lunos shares with the 3 broken units mentioned in the previous video. Having this ability to keep the enemy frontline not only steady, but constantly getting pushed back is powerful, because you can regain any lost ground really easily without the enemies pushing back. It can act as a panic button if enemies start pushing up too far to give some breathing room and stabilize the fight. Something to note with Lunos' Conjure is that he actually has 2 different Conjures between his forms, which is unique to him only as of the making of this video. In his first form, his Conjure only deals around 15k damage, has an attack range of 600, and a level 3 mini-surge that spawns between the 300 to 600 range. With his second form, his Conjure has around 45k damage, 800 attack range, and a level 5 mini-surge that spawns between the 400 to 700 range. With this, Lunos' second form Conjure is clearly the better of the 2, being better in every aspect. But with the theming of Uberfest units, it would be standard to have it balanced out with a longer cooldown rate and higher cost compared to its first form. Oh. Why? This is where people point to Lunos being absurdly broken, with his ridiculous 9.8 second cooldown rate in both forms. Conjure before was just treated as a supplementary ability some units had and was overall considered a downside to some Conjure units as it removed their stacking capabilities, but Lunos flips that on its head and makes it his main selling point. His Conjure has potent use in both defensive and offensive usage, and for offensive Conjure units it's a rare role that few units fill, outside of base cheesing. The only relevant comparable units that can use their Conjure offensively is with Socrates with his weakened Conjure, and Skanda with his freeze Conjure. The main thing with these two are that their Conjures are commonly used in conjunction with other high damage units, so even in an offensive scenario they still serve as a supporting role. This is where Lunos separates himself, as with his Conjure and cooldown rate combination, he can serve as the main carry for his strategy, if not fully solo the stage. If you get him early enough in progression, you can completely sequence break levels and complete them way earlier than intended. Take for example the Crazed Cat stage. The typical strategy for it is to stack Bahamut's on the peons and use Wallcat to protect them, then spam 3 to 4 meat shields and some stackable attackers like Dragon Cat. It's typically recommended that you have all your tech upgrades maxed out and plus leveled. With Lunos, you can cut down your meat shields to just 2, and have 2 main attackers, Dragon Cat and Bahamut. The tech upgrades can also just be level 20, no plus levels needed. Let's push it even further, moving on to the Crazed Wall stage. It also typically recommends 4 meat shields, and to have a rich cat and sniper power up active. For attackers, you would have your typical stackable units like Dragon Cat, and backliners like Bahamut and Ururan. It's also highly recommended to have maxed out levels, including plus levels, on all your tech, and around level 25 to 30 units. Let's now take a look at the strategy and levels required when Lunos is involved. Are we serious right now? You can start to see how absurd Lunos can get when this is all you need to beat Crazed Wall. Lunos can deal with all the waves of support, and both keep and gain ground in the stage. No need for a rich cat as he can handle the start off well. No need for a sniper power up to gain back little bits of ground. He can do it all while supplying damage. For a quick comparison, here's my lineup for absolute defense when I played through it on my returner mode account. All my units were around level 25 except for Bahamut and Crazed Cat, and I had to use a sniper power up to keep my ground. I needed all of this just to match the capabilities of Lunos. If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to like and subscribe for more in the future, as a very small percentage of you guys are subscribed. Thank you. I have been glorifying Lunos a little bit though, and left out some small details, one of them being how long the battles will take. Granted, for Crazed Wall I only relied on Lunos for damage, but even looking at the Crazed Cat lineup having both Dragon Cat and Bahamut, they didn't surpass Lunos in damage, which would indicate that they did not really get a chance to land their attacks too often. Lunos can turn every battle into an endurance stage, and almost guarantee you don't lose, but you better be ready to sit and play the same stage for a while. It wouldn't be a sit back and relax for a while either. You have to stay engaged with the level to ensure Lunos is sent out whenever possible, and have his Conjure used before he dies every time. This also brings up another downside with Lunos: money. In his second form, he costs 3,450 to send out, which is a lot for a unit this spammable. It's fine in the early game, as the stages have a lot of peons you can gain money off of, but when getting into mid to late game stages, there aren't too many where you can get easy money off of peons, as they either aren't there in the level, or drop little to no money. He's not too sustainable when you have a typical lineup with your stackable mid-rangers, since those mid-rangers put you into debt if you want to send them out consistently. But his skill set can replace mid-rangers and meat shields since he can cover for damage and keep the enemies in check, removing the main cash deficit in the typical lineups. But then we end up coming back to the same issue of stages taking absurdly long to beat. It wouldn't be bad if you were doing it for 1 or 2 stages at a time, especially if you're stuck on a particular stage, but using him like that for every stage you play can get exhausting and really stunt your progress. I mentioned earlier how Lunos can turn every stage into an endurance one, and almost guarantee you don't lose. The almost is intentional because of one small quirk with him: timing the Conjures. It can be as simple as sending him in, and then using the Conjure as soon as he's in range, which is good for just trying to gain background immediately. but not the best overall, as it would result in him being alive after his Conjure usage, which then you'd have to wait for him to die before sending out another one, and lose the ground you just gained. So how about trying to time his Conjure as late as possible to cover the downtime between deployments? That would help a lot to keep the front line steady and pushed back more, but then it would get a lot harder to keep that up. You'd have to keep in mind when he's close to dying to best time his Conjure. Do it too early, and he stays alive and delays the next Lunos. Do it too late, and the Conjure either misses, or you miss the chance to use the Conjure, which can be a big hit at your chance to beat the stage. Even if you get the rhythm down, you'd have to keep it up for however long it takes, which we know can take ages, and at some point you might slip up, which could be enough for the enemy to push through and win. It gets a lot more complicated to use him later in the game, as the stage compositions become different, and harder to sustain your cash pool. It's made much easier if he's used in a stage against his target traits though, since he lives for a much longer time and lets you build up money. A good amount of mid to late game stages do include enemies that Lunos targets, so it can still be applicable, but you still have to think about when to time his Conjure to make the most of it, as it becomes more unforgiving, especially on 2 and 3 star magnifications. Lunos taken at face value can seem utterly broken and easy to use, but when looking more into the details, he shows to be a lot more complex compared to the other Fest units, having a very unique gimmick that really unlocks the potential of Conjure units. He has the power and potential to be the best Uber, but you really need to know what you're doing with him to reach that potential. He may not be as easy to use as Dastly and all the other clones, but you can surpass them in effectiveness if used correctly. I personally think he is a fun Uber to use, especially compared to the past Fest units we have gotten, but is a bit hindered with how long stages can take if you use him. Here's a bit of small trivia. A new Uber for Galaxy Gals, Reclusa, was planned to be released in 15.0 for the English version, but she was removed from the cat guide in 15.1, which is the same version that Lunos was introduced, then re-added back in 15.2. It's nothing confirmed as of this video, and just speculation, but it would be quite the coincidence if they weren't tied somehow. Anywho, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. See ya.